For 20 years, infamous kidnapper Franklin Delano Floyd stuck to variations of the same lie about the fate of the 6-year-old boy he took from a Choctaw elementary school in 1994. Michael Anthony Hughes had been taken to a safe place, Floyd would say. Floyd would also say the boy was his son, despite what a blood test showed, and he did what he had to do. But from death row in Florida in September of 2014, Floyd finally admitted to 2 FBI agents what had been suspected all along. He had killed Michael the same day after it became clear his plans to raise the boy while a fugitive weren't going to work this time. For Michael's foster parents, the revelation provided some closure. Ernest and Merle Bean feel Michael, who sings solos at church, is now with Jesus. Floyd had murdered the first grader on the same day he kidnapped him. They were driving from Oklahoma City to Dallas. The youngster was being a typical 6-year-old, out of control, until Floyd shot him twice in the back of the head.
She didn't know her real name. But when she found out, she died. For over 2 decades, she lived under names that weren't hers. Sharon Marshall, Tanya Hughes, a student, a stripper, a wife, a mother, and a victim. But this story isn't just about who she was. It's about who stole her, and why. Because the man who raised her wasn't her father. He was her abductor, her groomer, and maybe her killer. She was a star student, top of her class, offered a full scholarship to study aerospace engineering. She should have been designing rockets. Instead, she was dancing in strip clubs. Married to the man who kidnapped her as a child. Carrying his child. Living a lie she didn't choose and couldn't escape. What would drive a brilliant young woman to attempt the impossible, escaping a man who controlled every breath she took? Before we move forward with this big update, please take a moment to comment below with the city you're watching from. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification bell to stay updated. For exclusives and other cool perks, you can join the channel, link is in the description. Share the video with others. Stories like this must be heard, so we can help prevent future tragedies. The perfect student's dark secret. She graduated high school in 1986 as Sharon Marshall, an honors student, ROTC rising star, dreaming of NASA and aerospace engineering. Teachers described her as disciplined, respectful, family-oriented. But no one questioned why her father, Warren, insisted she return from practice by 4:30 p.m. every day. Behind that polished yearbook photo, a lifetime of secrets. She'd earned a full scholarship to Georgia Tech, a rare opportunity, especially for a young woman in the 1980s South. But suddenly, at 18, she dropped out. Warren said she'd become pregnant. She told friends, "Daddy won't let me go to college now." But who was Warren? And why would he replace her dreams with exhaustion and obedience? Sharon's supposed father was Franklin Delano Floyd, a man living under aliases. He married her mother in 1975 in Texas, then when her mother went to jail for bad checks, he vanished with 4 children. 2 were abandoned, 1 went missing, and Sharon, aged about 5, became his daughter. What kind of man raises someone he kidnapped? And what happens when identity is built on coercion, lies, and invisibility? By 1989, they were living in Oklahoma under new names. Sharon was now Tanya Hughes. Floyd was now Clarence Hughes. They married in New Orleans, where she gave birth to Michael Anthony Hughes. But DNA would later reveal Floyd wasn't Michael's father, and she'd never attended Georgia Tech. Could a brilliant student become a stripper at a club called Passions, in Tulsa, under Floyd's control? She thought escape was possible, secretly contacting a boyfriend in college. But Floyd's grip tightened. She confided to friends, he'd kill her and her son if she tried to leave. A co-worker named Karen Parsley remembered, she was terrified of him. Behind every sunny smile was fear. But in 1990, she tried to escape. What drove her to risk everything? What secret did she carry that he couldn't tolerate? On to the highway discovery that would expose decades of lies. The man who erased lives. From the moment he was born, June 17, 1943, in Barnesville, Georgia, Franklin Delano Floyd's life read like a tragedy. His father died before he turned 1. He was shuffled through orphanages full of control, discipline, isolation, and early trauma. By 16, he had already stolen a gun from Sears. Weeks later he abducted a 4-year-old at a bowling alley. Convicted, he was sent to prison for 10 to 20 years. When he emerged, Floyd vanished, not from memory, but into a new identity. How does a convicted child abductor simply disappear into society? Over the next decade he'd take on names like Brandon Williams, Warren Marshall, Clarence Hughes, each a thin mask hiding the same cold pattern: control, disappearance, and children left behind. In 1974, under the alias Brandon Williams, he met Sandra Chipman, a single mother of 4, including 5-year-old Suzanne Savakis. He moved the family to Dallas and quickly married Sandra. But when she served 30 days in jail for passing bad checks in 1975, Sandra returned to a nightmare. Floyd had taken off, taking all 4 children. 2 sisters later surfaced in foster care. Suzanne and her baby brother Philip never reappeared. Authorities declined to classify it as kidnapping, claiming Floyd was a stepfather. No charges were filed. In the shadows of subterfuge, he built new lives. But how do you completely erase a child's identity? Suzanne was renamed Sharon Marshall, then Tanya Hughes. They moved through Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma. They had documents, school enrollments, new histories. Each detail manufactured to erase her past. A master of deception, he even joined the Fraternal Order of Police, though he'd never served, using that fake badge as leverage, projecting authority to dominate her world. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a ghost. Wherever he went, scrutiny faded, children disappeared. When she became pregnant with Michael, it wasn't love, it was another form of ownership. Another anchor. But what happens when someone forced to live decades under false identity decides they've had enough? The night she tried to run. The night everything went wrong on an Oklahoma highway. In April 1990, at just 20 years old, she stood on the edge of escape, yet never made it home. Late one afternoon, Suzanne, living as Tanya Hughes, walked away from a convenience store toward a Motel 6. Groceries in hand. Minutes later, 3 strangers found her slumped on the shoulder of a service road, 50 miles outside Oklahoma City. Groceries scattered. No ID on her body. What happened in those missing minutes? Bruises flecked her arms. A massive hematoma at the base of her skull. No broken bones. Yet doctors would note, the trauma didn't align with a road accident. The wound spoke of violence. Her last word as she was wheeled into Presbyterian Hospital: "Daddy." Over and over, and then silence. By the next morning, a man identifying himself as Clarence Hughes arrived and declared her his wife. He taped a "No visitors" sign outside her hospital room. Later, he claimed to have fallen asleep at the motel, in the very same place she disappeared from. The story didn't add up. Was it a hit and run, or a carefully crafted setup? Friends had whispered, Tanya wanted out. She confided there was a plan. A plan to run with their son. She told them Floyd threatened to kill both her and Michael if she tried to leave. When she collapsed on the highway, investigators later confirmed, Michael was not her husband's biological child. DNA ruled it out. Her pregnancy with him had overridden her dreams, and become a prison. So the central question remains. Was her death an accident she couldn't outrun, or a final silencing from the man who stole her identity? 5 days after the highway incident, she died. Police ruled it a hit and run. But her injuries told a different story. Floyd walked away from the hospital, left their son, vanished from his name, and surrendered identity. But he never walked away from the consequences. Because 4 years later, he would commit an act so brazen, so shocking, that it would finally expose the monster hiding behind the aliases. And then, a school invasion that terrified a nation. The boy who vanished. On September 12, 1994, Michael Anthony Hughes, aged just 6, was in first grade at Indian Meridian Elementary School in Choctaw, Oklahoma. He lived with foster parents Ernest and Merle Bean, who'd seen him progress remarkably from a traumatized child to one full of promise. Floyd had repeatedly petitioned for custody, claiming to be Michael's father. Despite a DNA test in 1992 proving he wasn't biologically related, he maintained his obsession. Then came the nightmare. Floyd entered the school, brandished a gun, and threatened Principal James Davis, "If you don't help me, you won't live." Forced at gunpoint, Davis led Floyd to Michael's classroom. It took only seconds for Floyd to manhandle both Michael and Davis into the principal's truck. They drove into the country until Davis was stripped of his clothes, cuffed to a tree, and abandoned. Michael vanished with Floyd. When Davis was finally rescued and Floyd was arrested 2 months later in Kentucky, Michael was not with him, and would never be seen again. As investigators questioned Floyd, Michael's foster mother recalled the boy saying quietly, "I'm afraid my dad did it." A chilling admission for a child to make, but one that would echo as a clue through the entire investigation. Floyd gave conflicting stories, one moment saying Michael was alive, safe, perhaps even overseas. The next, that he killed the boy the day he kidnapped him. What does it mean when a boy who loved and trusted a man calls him a killer? With no body, no burial site, no clear answer, Michael's disappearance became not just a criminal case, but a chilling puzzle. A boy erased. A monster unmasked. A family ripped apart. But 20 years later, the truth would finally surface in the most unexpected way. It was a confession that shattered everything. The final revelation. For years, the woman known as Sharon Marshall, or Tanya Hughes, remained a mystery. But in 2011, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reopened her case, guided by investigative reporting in A Beautiful Child by Matt Birkbeck. How does someone whose identity has been erased for 24 years come back into existence? FBI agent Scott Lobb and Nate Furr spent hours interviewing Franklin Floyd in a federal prison in Florida during 2014. They questioned him relentlessly about Tanya Hughes. He finally conceded, she was not his daughter. But Suzanne Marie Savakis, born September 6, 1969, in Michigan, the oldest child of Sandra Chipman Brandenburg. Within weeks, DNA testing matched her to a relative, and investigators visited Sandra. She saw the FBI's photos, a girl sitting on a man's lap. Recognizing the face, Sandra broke down. The Jane Doe had a name again. Suzanne. During the FBI interviews, Floyd also made another shocking admission about Michael Hughes. He had killed him in 1994, confessing he shot him twice in the back of the head. But there was one more impossible discovery waiting. On March 7, 2019, a man named Steve Patterson reached out over Facebook. He believed he was Sandra's long-lost son, Philip. DNA tests in 2020 confirmed it. Suddenly, one more corner of a fractured family snapped into place. Philip, Stevie, was alive and reunited with his biological family after over 4 decades. But even with these revelations, the deepest questions remained unanswered. The monster's last words. In 2014, 2 FBI special agents sat across from the man who had outwitted police for 3 decades. Now 71 years old, shackled, frail, and almost blind, Franklin Floyd no longer had the strength to run. What he had left was something far more dangerous. A memory, and a lie. They asked about Michael Hughes, the 6-year-old boy who vanished without a trace in 1994. And after 2 decades of silence, Floyd gave them an answer. I shot him twice in the back of the head the same day I took him. He wouldn't stop crying. He wouldn't listen. I lost my temper. He didn't cry. He didn't apologize. He didn't flinch. He just confessed. The boy's body. Floyd claimed he left it by the side of a rural road between Oklahoma and Texas, buried in a shallow grave. But when authorities scoured the area, nothing. No body. No bones. No clothes. Nothing to return to Michael's biological father. Nothing for closure. Just words. Spoken from a killer who had lied for 30 years. But there was something else they wanted from him. Not just Michael's story, but Suzanne's. They showed him photographs, DNA charts, a family tree he tried to sever. She died after slipping and hitting her head, he claimed vaguely. It was an accident. But when asked for a location, he gave them nothing. When pressed for a year, he couldn't remember. The man who remembered every lie he ever told, suddenly had amnesia. Floyd died on death row in January 2023. Alone. Blind. Silent to the end. He gave no final apology. No final map to Michael's grave. No burial site for Suzanne. But he couldn't take everything. Because today, her name is remembered. Suzanne Marie Savakis. She was a daughter. A sister. A mother. Not a prop in Franklin Floyd's fantasy. Not a girl erased. In Floyd's wake were other victims, Cheryl and Camesso, the exotic dancer whose body was found buried along a Florida highway. Megan, Suzanne's first daughter, born before Michael, who was taken from her mother and raised separately, disconnected from the truth. His legacy? A string of dead ends. Faked lives. Vanished children. But in the end, the truth won. We still don't have Michael's body. We may never get those answers. But we now know something far more powerful, who they were. What was stolen? And who took it? Franklin Floyd built an empire of lies. But even monsters run out of shadows. And now, we see him clearly. She wasn't just a girl in a picture. Her story didn't end with her disappearance or her death. It ended when someone refused to forget her. If you've ever felt unheard, invisible, controlled, remember, your voice matters. Your truth matters. Because justice is built one name at a time. What other stories are waiting to be uncovered? What other names need to be remembered? Share this story. Keep asking questions. Because lost children don't stay lost forever, not if someone keeps looking. Thank you for watching. Stay curious. Stay safe.